Hello, angels. So today we are going to be talking about revolutions. Mostly focusing because I don't know too much about the Haitian or any of the African revolutions for any of the countries in Africa or too many like that. So we're going to mostly be focusing not so much on the war aspect, but the philosophy aspect, the ideas, ideologies, stuff like that, and the reasons we have revolutions. Whereas if you would go to pretty much any other history channel or any other channel that goes over stuff like this in general, they're going to be more focusing on like the dates, the wars, the violence, stuff like that. I don't do that. We're going to be talking about the ideologies behind it. So I will be introducing something fabulous that's going to pop up a lot in the channel. The Notebook. This is The Notebook. No, not the book written by Nicholas Sparks. That man's a genius. This is The Notebook, and it's going to have all the stuff that I'm talking about should I choose to write it down. And as you can see, I've got 2 pages dedicated to revolutions. So let's begin. Revolutions usually have a pretty common cause, economic woes. For example, take the French Revolution. What sort of started that off was people couldn't afford to buy a loaf of bread. That's how bad it was. And a loaf of bread back then was not expensive. We're not thinking like $5 for a loaf of bread. It was probably not very much money, if you really think about it. So that's how bad the taxation was, and it's not like the people got a choice in this, because the ideologies that the French government used was a lot more close to the ideas put into place by the philosopher Niccolo Machiavelli, and I'll put some links down in the description of the video so you can do a little more research on this sicko. But to give you a little bit of a clue as to how demented Machiavelli was, he attended a public execution in which someone was split in half, and while the rest of the crowd gasped and was like, oh my gosh, that's awful, Machiavelli smiled. He smiled at just the utter insanity of it all. So that sort of gives you a rough idea of how this person was. His ideologies were very much, people are evil. Straight up, people suck. They're evil. There is no such thing as a good person. So we need to take away their rights, take away their freedoms, and just implement law. Doesn't make much sense to us as Americans, because for us, it's freedom, individual rights. That's just what it is. That's what our entire system is built on. We're a little more built on the ideologies such as that put into place by philosopher John Locke and Rousseau. Rousseau was a little more crazy. He pretty much said, if someone is stopping your freedom, kill them. And I mean, I don't agree with that ideology. But who knows? We got Lily just looking at me.
She said,
this is Lily. I'm not crazy. Leave me alone.
She said, I don't agree with the killing, but
I feel like if someone is causing you harm, do what it takes to make sure you're not hurt. We're drinking coffee. It's going great. But, so the French Revolution, it was because of economic woes. That's all that it was because of, as well as the injustices being done to 98% of their population, because one of the parts of the government that the French government had, the way they voted was something called the Three Estates, or the Third Estates. The first estate was the clergy. We're talking priests, nuns, pope, religious figures, because France, during the time period, let's look up what time they were a predominantly Catholic country. When did the French... Okay, so in 1789, France was just, in general, a pretty Catholic country. And even now, clergy does not pay taxes. Priests don't pay taxes. None of them pay taxes. It's a very interesting thing. So that made up like 0.5% of the population. And then that's the first estate. Keep in mind this sort of framework called the three estates. The second estate included the nobles, the rich people, stuff like that. The people, that's sort of where the term eat the rich came from, was the utter hatred that the peasantry had for the rich members of this society. And so they made up the other 0.5% of the population. Now 99% of the population was peasantry. People that were not considered rich enough to be nobles and were not religious to the level of clergymen. And so, but they were also, even though they made up the majority of the population, they were underrepresented in the court, in the three estates. So when they said, hey, we want to pay less taxes, you guys are getting richer, we're getting poorer, of course the other two estates are going to vote, no, you guys are going to keep paying taxes. They raised the taxes. And this just shows the second reason why we have revolutions. We've got economic woes, and Lily just said she loves revolutions.
I said live, laugh, love. I'm joking. Please don't cancel. Yeah, I'm joking.
Should we cancel her? I think we should cancel her. But these economic woes and unfair representation within government led to the French people being like, screw this. We can overpower these people. And they tried. And they won. And France became a free nation. Without the Americans' help. Interestingly enough. And a lot of the ideologies that France's new government, before we'll discuss the fall of the second government of France in another video, because the current government is not what it was. So, and their ideologies they used were that of the philosopher Hobbes. Interesting, kind of funny name. He sort of agreed with Niccolo Machiavelli. His statement was, people are evil to a certain extent, and so the government is there to help maintain order, but we should not take away their rights. So, the man's interesting. Whereas, if you take, for example, the American Revolution, how we were wronged by Britain, and hence why we revolted, we completely agreed with my personal favorite philosopher. I love this man, John Locke. We pretty much based our entire Constitution around what he said, with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Two things that he said were basic human rights were life and liberty. You can imagine not very many people liked him, because most of these philosophers were from a period in time, the European Age of Enlightenment. And during this time period, what was the main system of government was something called feudalism. And feudalism essentially was, there's one king, one person that has all the power, and he controls everything. That's like if I were to barge into someone's house and suddenly be like, I'm the boss. I take what I want. That's essentially what was happening. And it was wrong. We can fundamentally agree with that. And so, the American Revolution. So my main question for you guys, because with any revolution, you have to have fighters. Napoleon, Benedict Arnold on the side of the English because he was a filthy traitor to the Americans. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, all those people. Those are the fighters. And yes, fundamentally, they are incredibly important. But you also have to look into the side of the philosophers, the thinkers. We would have nothing to fight for if it were not for these ideologies that these thinkers gave us. So, in your guys' opinion, I'd like you to tell me down below in the comments, do you think the thinkers are more important or the fighters? I'd just like to know your opinions. Now, back into the notebook. I meant to just flop that open, but it decided to close on my face. It was fabulous. Don't laugh at me. She's over here laughing at me. Example. My friend's currently laying on the floor in my kitchen. I should let the dogs out just to mess with her.
Please don't. They don't like me.
Maya loves you.
You have to put booty hole in that face.
Yes, she does. When you really get down into the nitty gritty of it all, there's stages to I have notes from my history class that I'm going to use for this video, and I didn't grab them because I'm waiting for the coffee to kick in. There's stages to revolutions. Come on, baby cakes. These revolutions, you don't just start with nothing, because you can't take a small group of people and say, hey, let's go storm the palace. Like, if any of you, once again, for example, the French Revolution, have seen a picture of the Palace of Versailles, it's a beautiful thing, but it is massive and it's huge, and you have to take into consideration all the guards that were in there. And you can't just tell people, let's go storm the palace and take over. Let's kill the people that control the laws, taxes, government, input and output of trade, all of that basically controlled their lives. And let's just take over. You have to have something to back this, or else people aren't going to do it, and that is where we get, I think it's this one. Not that one. Don't judge me, people. The purple one. This is my history book. Y'all can come for me if you want. Go ahead. I know most people have their stuff together. This is only my third video. Don't judge me. The anatomy of a revolution. So, pre-revolution causes. We already slightly discussed those. Like I was just talking, reasoning behind why people have revolutions. Bankrupt government decides we're going to tax the citizens for the Sugar Act of 1764 that Britain placed on America, the colonies, the Stamp Act of 1765, the Townshend Act, and the Tea Act. All of those piss people off because they're over here thinking, these are things we have daily. The Stamp Act, it was a single piece of paper, you got taxed for that, which is ridiculous if you fundamentally think about it. And then, for the French, when it's bankrupt government taxes the citizen, King Louis, his people were in debt. Well, his government, because they fought for us during the American Revolution. Because, Lafayette showed up and was like, I can help you. He didn't seem to think that it would affect his country the way it did. So, King Louis decided, I'm gonna tax all of my people to such an extreme that they can't buy bread. If any one of you has seen Les Mis, you know exactly what the main character went to jail for. Or, not jail, but, indentured servant. He stole a piece of bread. Alright, the second part of pre-revolution caused. The government fails to respond to the needs of the people. For America, that's the Writs of Assistance in 1760 and the Quartering Act in 1765. You know what the Quartering Act is?
Maybe.
Okay, she doesn't know. Well, she might not know the name. But essentially, that is basically saying, the government saying, we cannot afford to house our British soldiers, so we are going to mandate that the civilians of the colonies house soldiers. So that's basically, once again, I'll use the modern day analogy, someone showing up on your door saying, you have to allow me to live in your house, you have to cook for me, clean up after me, all this stuff, because if you don't, you go to jail. See, we wouldn't be too fond of that. That's partially why we have one of the amendments in our Constitution basically saying, we can't make you do that. You can open your doors, but you can't make us do that. Now, on the French side, the government failing to respond to the needs of the people, you have the bad crop harvest of 1787 to 1788. And for some people, you might not think, oh, that's not a big deal. But for others, that is literally their entire livelihood, because that's how they pay for stuff. That's how they pay taxes. If you can't pay taxes, what happens? And so, the third part of a pre-revolution, restrictions placed on the people. The proclamation line in the Americas. Let's discuss that for a second. So, after the 7-Year War, in which, Britain fought against France, it decided we cannot trust the colonies to make smart choices. It's sort of like if your mom, for a while she's trusting you, you're making smart choices, but then you mess up and you get in trouble and you get grounded. You can't go somewhere or something like that. That's essentially what the proclamation line was saying. You can't cross this part of the line. It was the Appalachian Mountains. I don't care how you say that word, it's Appalachia. Now, for the French, restrictions placed on people, voting by class, not by head. Basically saying, because there were more representatives for the peasantry, the third estate, than there was for the clergy people and for the nobles. So, of course, you would think, oh, the peasantry would have more, hold in court. They don't. They really don't. They vote by class, not by head. And that is the pre-revolution causes. And now we slide into stage 1 of the revolution. Revolutionaries unite. Also, I'm using a piece of paper for my history class. Shout out to Mr. Cernak, the man's genius. I know he doesn't watch these videos, but I feel like, he's a genius. Anyways, so the first part of stage 1. Revolutionaries unite and make impossible demands of the government. For the Americans, the Second Continental Congress of 1775, basically saying, this is the colony speaking, you guys are all the way across the ocean. You aren't here with us. You don't know what we're living like. You cannot say how we should live. So they're asking, let us control ourselves. That didn't end well. The government basically.
Guys, what was that? That's so weird. What the heck? What was that?
I'm trying to for a history video, Lily, and you show me that. Anyways, Second Continental Congress. And so, the government said, no, we still want to control you because we're making money off of you. Look how she's just in my fridge.
I'm putting the milk away.
And so the colonists respond with something that we absolutely love. I've seen people get this date tattooed on their body. 1776, the Declaration of Independence. Basically, the world's longest, most dramatic breakup letter in the world. You can let him out. Lily? You can let him out.
What?
You can let him out.
No, I want to.
She's a jerk. Now, for the French side of this conversation of Revolutionaries Unite, the National Assembly and Declaration of the Rights of Men and Citizens. Basically, it's the peasants saying, you guys, they're speaking to the second estate and the first estate, you guys have to respect us. We are human just as much as you are, just because we don't make as much money. Just because we're not rich doesn't mean we have less value, which I feel like is an idea we could place in today's society a lot, because we put rich people on a pedestal when oftentimes it's kind of a bit of generational wealth sometimes, or not always working hard for it. Now, if you take in the second steps to stage 1 of the revolution, government unsuccessfully attempts to suppress revolutionaries. Revolutionaries gain power. 1770. Let's paint a picture. You're in Boston, so this is the American aspect, and there's a bit of an argument between the redcoat soldiers and some colonists, civilians. And suddenly one of the soldiers fires his gun. And next thing you know, 5 people are dead. The Boston Massacre. That is the failed attempt to suppress the revolutionaries, leading to the Boston Tea Party of 1773, and then the Intolerable Acts put into place as another attempt to suppress the revolutionaries in 1774. I will leave links to articles you can go and read more about this down below, because this is all very important if you ask me. And now, the French aspect of the government suppressing the people. Storming the Bastille. The Bastille was the prison, and I'm pretty sure there's a monument there now in France, rather than the actual prison where the French government kept enemies of the state, people that disagreed with them. But that's also where they kept all the weapons. Not a good idea. If you ever happen to start running a country, don't keep all the weapons in one spot where everyone knows where they are. I feel like that's just running a country 101. Makes sense, right? Don't keep all the weapons in one spot in case people decided to revolt.
Right.
It's just logic if you ask me.
You added me. Oh. Sorry. I'm sorry.
I'm about to kick you out. Anyways, so when the peasants stormed the Bastille, they were able to successfully take over, leading to stage 2, the revolutionaries fall apart. Thankfully, America did not suffer stage 2 or 3. We hopped all the way down to results. Everyone sort of agreed in America. So now we're going to focus a little more on the French. The revolutionaries fall apart. So we have to first talk about the moderates and the radicals. So the moderates in France were like, we still want a king, a monarchy, but we want, I can't believe you, a constitutional monarchy in which we still have this king, but he has to listen to us. We vote, we make decisions. Radicals were like, no, we want a democratic republic. We want to vote, make all the decisions, because that's just how it should be if you ask me. I don't support the moderates. I think they're a waste of space. Don't come for me, people. I say it a lot. Anyways, so the revolutionaries fall apart because the moderates want a monarchy, and the radicals want a republic. Sadly. And so now we discuss a man, I can't say his name. Basically, he's considered the strong man of the French Revolution, and he ends up getting executed later. He's also the guy sort of in charge during the Reign of Terror, which we'll be discussing in 2 minutes. So they overthrow the monarchy, hip hip hooray, and a republic is established. Because, that's the next step, is power is gained by radical groups. And so a republic is established. And now the radicals create a new society and push opponents during the Reign of Terror. Now let's discuss the Reign of Terror in the French Revolution. We all know Marie Antoinette was beheaded. King Louis was beheaded. Their children were beheaded. Every noble in France, unless they managed to escape in time, was killed. And they weren't privately killed. These were like, we go to watch a Super Bowl game. We're hip, we're cheering, we're going, woo, woo, our favorite team. These people were cheering for the deaths of these people, of children. I feel like we should just discuss that real quick. Marie Antoinette's children were, I think, the oldest was 12 when his head was cut off. Let that sink in for a second. 12 years old. How does that feel, people? And then the Reign of Terror lasted from 1793 to 1794. There were 300,000 people arrested and 17,000 people executed by guillotine. Keep in mind, they didn't properly keep everything in order. We don't actually know how many people 100% died. If I'm incorrect about that, please correct me down in the comments and show me your, evidence. And that leads to the stage 3 of the revolutions. Once again, America does not have a stage 3. We hopped right down to results, which is fan-freaking-tastic. So, in stage 3, a strong man emerges and the revolution ends. Let's take a wild guess who the strong man for the French might be. He was a TikTok trend for a while. Really? Who is it?
What?
Who's the strong man in the French Revolution? He was a TikTok trend for a while.
George Washington.
Napoleon, guys.
Napoleon Dynamite. How do you spell confrontations?
Oh my gosh. You know what? Figure it out, Lily. Okay, Napoleon shows up. And then he gets exiled. He tried hard, he did a couple good things, and then he gets exiled. Must suck. El Bozo. Sorry, that was not very professional. And so now we get to the results of revolutions. Which social group benefited the most? Which lost? Did the original group ever return to power? And this is where it gets interesting. So the American elites, they gained the most during the independence. And no, the British never came back to power. So basically, it was just another day for the farmers. It was like, okay, just another day for the farmers. We still have to go out and work. Whereas the elites are like, yeah, we control the taxes now, suckers. Now look how much money we're paying in taxes. I'm not calling for a revolt. I'm just saying.
You're gonna start a war.
I wouldn't start a war per se. Anyhow, no one send this to the government, please. The British never did come back to power. Sadly, some of them are still butthurt about that. Anyways. Whereas the French, the middle class has more representation in the French government. That's the group. And the nobility lost many of their privileges. And the clergy also started having to pay taxes. But sadly, the French monarchy did return to power. But not anymore. France isn't a monarchy anymore. And this leads us to the final part of the video. Almost 30 minutes in, guys. Longest video ever. I really hope you guys stayed to watch this. What were the political, social, and economic changes and continuities of society? In America, representative government started. Westward expansion. So we no longer had the proclamation line, or what's it called? Yeah, proclamation line. We could go wherever we wanted, which did lead to a lot of issues with the native tribes around, because they were like, why are you guys over here? We already have issues and now you're coming into our spaces. Like, that's not necessary. It was necessary for some people though, I guess. And now there was continued trade with Britain and France. I know, people are like, why would you continue to trade with France? You just lost, or not France, Britain, you just lost or won the war. Because there's still economic gain. We're a capitalistic society, it's just the way it is.
What the heck?
Alright, whereas for France, still a monarchy, but a constitutional one. So, I have a question for if you stayed for the whole video. If not, totally okay. Do you think the philosophers, the thinkers, John Locke, Hobbes, hate to throw them in here, Machiavelli and Rousseau, are more important when it comes to a rebellion? Or do you think the fighters, Napoleon, George Washington, people like that, are more important? Put your answers and comments down below, and I'll be putting a link to all the information I could have. Thank you, and gently tap that subscribe button. We don't hit here.
I do.
Bye, angels. Love y'all.